Hello and welcome behind the bar of A Pint of Cthulhu. Today I'm joined by my co-host Jay, as well as the two creators of the very fun and very enjoyable Salvage Union. Would you like to say hello, guys, and introduce yourselves?
Yeah, so I'm Panny. I'm one of the writers and designers of Salvage Union.
I'm Aled. Also had a hand in the design, but I tend to focus more on the graphic and production side of things, like layout and stuff like that.
Well, we'll start with the all-encompassing icebreaker that we ask every guest. If you could say A Pint of Cthulhu was any type of drink, what would it be?
Oh, Jesus wept. Something with wormwood in it. Some kind of absinthe cocktail, definitely.
Yeah, it's absinthe and Guinness.
Absinthe and Guinness,
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, no.
That
But
sounds
also, no, okay,
disgusting.
so I actually have like a gin from the Isle of Harris, and when we went to the distillery to buy it, they had like this little vial dropper thing that they sell you along with it, and it's like a concentrated seaweed essence to put in the like gin and tonic, so it definitely have some of that in it as well, right? For that sea taste, yeah.
It's got to taste like the sea. Yeah.
It's got to taste really, really grim and also get you massively wasted.
Yeah,
so,
and a
like,
bit hallucinogenic.
and a bit hallucinogenic, hence the
The
absinthe.
absinthe,
Yeah, no. But no, I like the Guinness actually. That's a good addition. Yeah, no, I like that. Yeah.
I'm going to try that now.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
As horrifying as that sounds, I'm probably going to have to try that.
You'll find it
I'm
somewhere,
kind of
sure.
surprised how easy that question was. Like when you first asked it, I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure," but we actually, I think
You asked the right people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what's you two's history with TTRPGs? What ones have you played a lot of? What ones have you seen a lot of?
I've been playing TTRPG since I was a teenager. I started with Dungeons and Dragons 4th edition of all the editions, and run a good campaign of that for me and my friends for a long time. And then when I sort of got a bit older and ended up in uni, I joined the Game Society there, and then we played a huge variety of games, and that's when I sort of got interested in more of the indie game scene. I found, so my friend run me Dogs in the Vineyard by Vincent Baker, which is you play as kind of like Mormon clerics who go around a sort of Wild West setting, and it has a really interesting escalation mechanic where you have to go from like sort of verbal sort of sparring to like fist fighting to finally shooting, and it was like just a really interesting take versus sort of the the D&D games I was used to, where if someone annoyed you, you'd immediately throw a fireball at them. So and obviously Vincent Baker, quite a clever guy, ended up creating the Power by the Apocalypse system, which has turned out to be pretty good. And then I got into that as well. So that was sort of my my TTRPG journey in a brief nutshell, going from D&D to kind of indie stuff, and then onwards and upwards, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I never really actually played any real games. When I was like 10, me and a mate decided we wanted to like play a story gamey thing. I don't know. We just kind of made it up. So we've been playing a lot of 40k. So we took like the stat lines from 40k and made characters based on those stat lines, and then I drew a map, and we sort of accidentally started playing RPGs. And then I did that for like literally 16 years, and it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I actually played D&D for the first time. And then it just actually felt really weird because there was so many fucking rules. Sorry, can I swear, by the way?
For sure.
Okay,
You swear all the
so
time.
many fucking rules, and I just couldn't keep track of all of it. So like, I've always been since then on like the rules like side of things, and more like of an FKR vibe, because it's always been kind of made up things. But in the last sort of like 10 years, I guess I've played like tried to deliberately expose myself to a lot of things. Penny's helped with that, running a lot of stuff on me. So
I've deliberately exposed you to a lot of things.
Thanks, Penny. Yeah.
You are. Well, you kind of already answered one of the ones we're going to ask, so we'll skip forward one. So, Salvage Union, what inspired you? What was the start of how you guys came about creating this?
So that was actually the initial concept wasn't for an RPG, it was for a tabletop game, and it was because Games Workshop released Horus Heresy that a lot of the boys that I know from back home wanted to play, and I saw the price of it, and I was like, screw that, I'm not paying that. I'll make my own game.
Tabletop war game.
Yeah, tabletop war game. Yeah. So so it sort of started as that, and I was sort of building this tabletop war game thing. But obviously, tabletop war games are outrageously expensive to even get off the ground. And I had like a little playtest set and stuff, but it was a bit shit. I'm not gonna lie. It was the first idea that you have, and you just run with it. Then we were down the pub, weren't we? And chatting about stuff, and we both sort of spun off, and we were trying to do our own thing separately. And I was like, hey, I'm really stuck with this project because I'm really bad at like writing stuff and actually committing things to paper. And Panny's got obviously a lot of experience in RPGs and stuff, so I was like, do you fancy teaming up? And that's kind of how we went with it. And you devved it out from what I had, and wrote it all out, and I carried on the way on it.
Yeah, no, I think that was the broad gist, and that's where we we went for a few iterations initially because so Alan had a lot of initial prep from the war game that he was developing around that concept, so I took it and I was like, how do we RPGify this? And the question there was in like sort of what sort of genre of RPG should we put it in? Then we looked at a few like as I said, like PBTA. It's obviously a pretty big genre, and Blades in the Dark was also a sort of interesting idea. But then obviously Beam Saber existed, which sort of cornered that area of the market and did it very well. So it felt like treading on those toes didn't work. We could have gone ultra light because I'm quite influenced by like old school D&D. That's one of my sort of favourite games, like basic and expert D&D and old school essentials at the moment, which is a sort of reiteration of that with good layout. I really love that. And so like an ultra rules light version could have been interesting, but then the mecha hack already existed and is very good as well. So again, we didn't want to tread on those toes. And then there was this RPG called Quest, which Alad had already in some of the playtests Alad did with the original sort of version, like original RPG version of it, kind of used the resolution mechanic from Quest because it is a good it's a D20 variable core resolution mechanic, which is just really clean and simple. You roll a d20 and you succeed, you effectively succeed, critical succeed with a tough choice, succeed with consequence, or you fail with consequence, or you critically fail with like a severe consequence. So it's just very clean. There's no modifiers or stats or anything to that, so you can just focus on like the narrative and the roleplay. So that was already there, and then I was like, well, why don't we just like do all of Quest? It has an open SRD. Why don't we port Quest sort of entirely into it, hack it entirely into a Salvage Union.
Then the abilities become like the systems and modules and stuff like
that.
Yeah.
And that was the logic, and it was like, because the real thing was like, how do we? Because we wanted a simple mech game, but it was like, how do we make a game feel like it's still a crunchier mech game? I love like BattleTech, for example, and I love being able to like target their arms and strip their armor and then knock out one of their weapons, or take out their reactor with a certain like core to like hit him the back of the mech and where the armor's weakest and taking out their core that way. All those sort of things have a really good vibe to them. So it was like, how do we get that feeling without the crunchy elements? And the abilities in Quest really worked for that because they let you just be like, oh, well, I just do the thing. I use my pinpoint targeter. I use that ability and I just blow your arm off. Or I use this ability to jump behind your mech and strip the armor off its back, or I have armor plating which can protect me, but it blows off and it scatters and is destroyed, but it prevents a hit. So you get that sort of feeling of that sort of more.
And also the mech building. That was kind of like the key thing for me, was like having the mech building in it, because like for me a mech game, like spending a lot of time playing like MechWarrior 3 just in the character creation screen, like it's like character create to the RPG, right? Like it's you just spend hours and hours like detailing out your mech, and you're like, okay, well if I take like 20 lasers and 5 heat sinks, then can I shoot them all without blowing up immediately? And that's kind of what it allowed us to do with Salvage, is like you've got all of these hundreds of systems and modules, but it's kind of simple because all of that is like downtime, right? It's not mid-game. Like when you're actually playing, you only have a limited number, but you can spend your time between games just like poring over the book and doing that. And that sort of takes me back to like the 40k thing as well, right? Like it's like army building. Like when you're a kid, like when I was 12, and I just carried around the codex with me everywhere I went, like every family trip or whatever. It's like you just sat in the back of the car writing lists. You're never playing them. You're just writing the lists, right? Like, but that's half the fun, you know, is in just doing that. So
yeah. No, absolutely. I've got fond memories. I remember like sitting on a bench like with my mum there when I was like 9, just like writing a list out before I went to like. She took me to the games workshop because I was like, no, Mum, I've got to write the list. They won't let me play. I mean, they weren't. It was true. I went in and they were like, "Do you have a list?" I was like, "Yeah, I've got a list." Like, okay.
I have 20.
Plastic crack army.
Yeah, no, get them while they're young. Games Workshop nailed that one.
Definitely an addictive one, that. I can't remember what interview it was on, but I remember one of you said Mech Commander.
So Mech Commander is the I remember playing that when I was about 12 or so. It's almost like an isometric sort of team-based strategy version of, I think, Mech Warrior. It was one of the many influences. I think there's Mech Warrior, BattleTech, like both the video games and the tabletop. I played a lot of Mech Warrior 4 as well, Mech Warrior 4 Vengeance and Mech Warrior 4 Mercenaries. You were more, I think, Mech Warrior 3. Just
literally Mech Warrior 3 and Steel Battalion. And the only reason I played Steel Battalion was because of that controller. And honestly, it's a terrible fucking game. It's so hard to play. But that controller was like ace. Like, you know,
yeah. My first Mech game was actually I was like 8, and it was Mech Warrior 2 on the Sega Saturn, which my dad got me.
Oh wow!
And imagine controlling Mech Warrior with a D-pad. Like the Sega Saturn controller was a D-pad, like A, B, C, and L and R. Like it was, I had no idea what I was doing. All I remember from that game was it had a really good opening cinematic.
And you had the Steel Battalion controller. I've just looked that up.
Yeah, no, it was wild. I didn't actually have it. My friend Adam had it, and we used to go around to his house just to play it. But like, his parents used to go away a lot, so he used to have like these parties when we were like 15, 16, and his parents would go away and just leave him in the house by himself, which is kind of bad now thinking about it, but like we used to love it at the time because we'd go around there and like, because I grew up in North Wales in the country, so like when we used to drink we used to go camping, so it was when someone had an open house, like you've got the empty, right, like, you know, you go around there and so he just like, we just go there and we just sit in front of the massive TV with the thing and, you know, the controller and just take turns, right, playing. But yeah, no, it's really hard to play actually because it's like the like recent VR titles, like Mech VR titles, and it's like you have to like control. It's kind of like a flight sim in that you have to be like really coordinated in what you're doing at all times. It's not as easy as Mech Warrior to play, and then that's what makes it kind of really difficult to kind of like get, and it's not, and I never really liked that. I like the aesthetic, like, you know, the gameplay experience, because you're playing with this controller and it feels amazing, but it's also really, really hard. And then this was kind of the thing with like so Lancer, for example. I love Lancer, like, you know, the book and the illustration and everything is amazing, but actually trying to bring it to the table is impossible. Like, you know, there's so much to keep in mind all the time that it's really difficult for me to like process, which is kind of where Salvage came from as well. It's like, you know, it's this thing of, okay, cool, so we have this vibe going on, but like, can we make it actually easy for people to do the things that they want to do? And that's very important.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah.
That was something that really surprised us all, I think, about Salvage Union, because I've looked into Lancer before. I'm a huge Transformers fan, so the idea of a robot mecha TTRPG is great. But as you said, it's complicated as hell, and a lot of TTRPGs, especially when they're trying to be very different things from D&D, Pathfinder, that kind of thing, they overcomplicate things a lot and they're really hard to get into. Salvage Union was super easy. It was really simple and really intuitive.
Oh, thank you for saying so. Yeah, that's we succeeded.
Design goals succeeded. Yeah, I mean, it was a huge part of our design, and we, you know, and we just, we shaved off so many mechanics as well.
Oh god, yeah, shooting all those darlings.
All those darlings, you know. We had a stress mechanic for pilots at one point, for example, which wasn't like in of itself complicated, but it just adds that other layer. And you find this sort of quantitative thing when you're designing, where like if you just, even if individually a thing simply, when you just keep adding stuff, eventually it just like dies by the weight of the thing.
And the amount of edge cases we had to cut in terms of keywords, because obviously a lot of Salvage Union is based around keywords, particularly for like systems and modules. So it's like a keyword does like a thing, right? So. And the amount of keywords we cut just because we were like, do we really need to make a ruling for this? Like, do we need to make it? Sorry, not a ruling, a rule.
A rule,
right?
yeah.
Do we need a rule for this thing that might happen once in 100 games or 1,000 games? And you know, we get asked about it a lot by fans and customers. But it's kind of. It's important, I think, not to have those things, because if you have those things, then all of a sudden now that's more load, particularly on the GM, right? Like to know that and to bear it in mind. If you don't have it, you can work it out easy enough. Like, you know, it's so yeah, it's like trimming it down to really just what needs to be there. And I think that's an important part of our just sort of like general design philosophy, right?
No, absolutely, yeah. I think, and with Salvage, really, it's like the core mechanic, which is about D20. You've got your abilities, which are both your pilot abilities, but also your mechs equally have like ability. Like each thing you add to your mech is sort of an ability, and then there's the keywords, and traits, which are like, you know, your gun might have a pinning trait, which means it might jam if it. It might have a jamming trait, which means it might jam, or it has the pinning trait, which lets you like pin infantry or whatnot. But it's kept very simple. It's kept as simple as possible. And but it is good to hear that that does shine through, because it was a real core of our design goal. Because you know we wanted Salvage Union to, you know, the game for the tired dad really was to, like
that's me then.
The actual like the name and the concept actually came from a playtest that a friend of mine, Mal Illich. So he actually wrote a game called Bane. Which was bio-armored neuroexoskeleton, right? But it was more of a Gundam-y thing, like, you know, in terms of it. But he had like in the background this concept of like Salvage Union, and like that's where like the initial concept of actually taking that, running with it, because that was like a pretty simple game. It's not something he ever developed into a thing, so we licensed it from him, and like that sort of just Salvage Union concept, right? That was a really fun playtest. It was actually one of the inspirations, I guess, for running with it. But
and obviously that became really important. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, go on.
Speaking of inspirations, you've already mentioned, you know, the video games of the ye olden times. So I'm sure Matt knows a little better than I do. Did you end up taking inspiration from any like more well-known mecha stuff? Like you mentioned Gundam, Transformers, Neo Evangelion.
Yeah, Neo Genesis definitely for me. Like, oh man, I loved that show when I was like 17. That was definitely a big one. Mad Max as well. I think just in terms of setting, definitely huge.
No Max, but definitely Mad Max. I mean, some of the influences came sort of from outside the mecha genre. Like there was
also 2000 AD and the Wasteland thing.
Yeah,
so actually, I had an art book of the Judge Dredd movie, the Sylvester Stallone one, and a lot of the art book was like, or a section of it at least, was dedicated to the bit in the Wasteland. You know, where they go out, and that was a big influence for me, at least, in terms of visual aesthetic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think for me, so one of the modules, False Flag, is set in a sort of Cold War-esque scenario where a alien anomaly called the Meld has impacted this area and made everything very weird and left behind a lot of artifacts and powerful resources and things like that. And I took a lot of inspiration as a result from a Roadside Picnic, which is a Russian novel which people may be more familiar with because it inspired the Stalker series. People might be more familiar with that if you know the Stalker video games, or the Stalker film as well.
Okay, points if you can name the author, because I've read that because you lent it to me and I still can't remember the author's name.
Yeah, my brain's actually farted there. I want to say Vasily something, but I'm probably completely wrong. And I apologise. Kalinske, I want to say. It's Kalinske, but I might be wrong. But yeah, that was a lot of inspiration. Amtrak Wars as well, which is an old 80s novel.
Great.
Yeah, about just this wasteland kind of setting, where it's more about they're more like aeroplane pilots, like future, like apocalyptic.
One other thing, actually.
Fighter jet pilots, but yeah.
Another thing, actually, big inspiration, particularly on the visual aesthetic, was one of the artists himself, actually, Hamish Freighter. When it was initially being concepted, I think even before your involvement, I'd commissioned some art from Hamish because I'd seen his art, like just stuff that he'd already done. And so some of the pieces were actually licensed rather than commissioned, because he'd done this really, really cool art. So like part of that setting is actually just like the art that he'd done. And it just looked like perfect for what we were trying to achieve. We were just like, we need this guy on board. And fortunately he was down for it. So credit where it's due. It was a big influence on what that setting turned out to be.
The Hamish art was huge. And I remember when seeing it, I was like, it would be awesome if we could effectively do for that art what Tales from a Loop did for like Simon Stalenhag's incredible art.
It's actually very, very similar
and
vibes.
It is very
well.
similar vibes, and I was like, what if we could turn that art into a game as well? I think that would be awesome. To a degree we tried to we did our best.
Live up to the expectations.
But there was quite a lot of broad set of influences. That sort of ran through it.
So it's funny how you should mention the Tales from the Loop and things like that. I was just about to ask you if that was something that came into your mind when creating Union. Especially some of the artwork looks not the same, but similar vibes. Vibe-wise, like Stalenhag, because Panny and I met while we worked at Modifius. At the time, obviously, they were distributing Tales from the Loop, and then obviously there's the Amazon series, which was kind of coincided with development. So, particularly I think the real thing that Stalenhag does so well, I think, is like placing these mechs and machines into like a normalized context. And then that was something that was quite important in terms of the sort of visual design for the mechs, and also like in terms of the game itself, is that they're not combat mechs. It's not like this is BattleTech and everything is like fighting all the time, or like 40k with Titans and they're war machines. These aren't war machines in Salvage Union. They're just like the biped JCBs, right? Like it's they're industrial equipment effectively that's been repurposed, and certainly like aesthetically and stylistically, that was like a huge influence,
Absolutely. I think and in similar respects, I think Tales from a Loop, obviously you play as children, sort of like investigating. It's like 80s kids on bike stuff, and in the same way we wanted to go for a sort of but you do blow things up in Salvage Union. You also are you're salvagers. You're actually going around like exploring, scattering the wastes, and you're salvaging sort of scrap and the sort of the stuff the corpos have left behind, and using that to sort of support your community. So there's a bit more of a sort of heart to it, rather than a lot of mech games where you are just sort of more of you're a cold-hearted mercenary who's just going out to gun stuff and return back. And I think that does come through in the gameplay as well. Like there's a lot of rules about salvaging, which we worked a lot on to make them sort of clean and simple, but also quite fun and engaging. And that forms quite a core part of the game. So I think it. But I think that was
we did a very deliberate decision as well in terms of the systems and modules. That we put a cap on the combat systems and modules that we put in at 30%, and so whenever we had an idea for a thing, we were like, okay, is that a combat thing or not? And if it was a combat thing, it's like, right, okay, well, is it? Oh, are we at 30%? Because if we are, then no, it has to get scrubbed. Because we didn't want it to be like just a combat game, right? Because combat stuff's really easy to do, because you're just like, right, okay, cool, let's make a number between this and this and give it give it a trait that allows it to do damage, right? But coming up with something else is actually it's really hard. Like, you know, what's a cool thing that's not a combat thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that works.
Got to ask, what is it you're cooking right now?
Oh, so I'm having a pizza.
I've got nuggies.
As you do.
Um,
Nuggies.
so, Penny, do you want to mention?
Yeah, well there, but never mind.
So, is it all right that we're just
Sorry.
We're
Fine.
we're halfway through a night
It's no
out, so we're
issue.
just kind of like
Can't be chewing in post.
I could just see you cooking. I was like, I've got to ask, what is it?
Sorry.
There's no problem. It's all right. So when you were coming up with the bad guy, as it were, the corporation, the nanite conglomerate thing that we fought in our little game, what was the inspiration for those kind of scenarios, situations, and creatures, really?
Well, I think the core thing is that you're salvagers and you're living in a corporate dystopia where you've found a way to sort of live outside of that by living communally. So, like, you're communists and the enemy is capitalism. Like, so that was quite easy because there's a lot of real life examples of that. Like, corporations bad. It was not too difficult.
That wasn't too easy though, because
it was easy for me. It's not easy for people.
No.
Yeah.
This is the thing, right? So it's easy to come up with that in terms of like the concept, but try writing communism into the rules for your game, right? It's impossible. Players are so. It's not just players. It's like everyone. We all are, and you don't even realize it, right? But as soon as you start saying, like, because one of the early rules was we like mandated that the scrap pool, so all the scrap that you get is communal, and everybody has to just share. It's the first thing that people house rule is like, no, the scrap you get is yours and you can do with it what you want. Because people can't comprehend the idea of like, no, this is just for everybody.
Yeah,
like, you know,
communal ownership is like, yeah, no,
communal ownership.
It breaks
like, no,
everyone's
this
brains.
This is my mech and this is my scrap and I can do with it what I want. Like it's like, you know, D&D and gold, right? Like the gold belongs to the player, not the group. And it's so inherent in everybody's attitude that actually trying to write that into a game is really hard.
Yeah, it's hard because you just bounce off players who constantly treat it like it's far more individualistic than it is. Even in playtesting, like there was constant like sort of even little things like players wanting to like buy NPCs drinks and me having to explain that like you're on a Union crawler. Everyone, like, you don't buy a drink, you just get given one because everyone's sharing. Like, there's no currency. Yeah. Like, it's a commune effectively. You know, like that was a really hard thing. And to a degree, that is a lot of people being capitalist build. To a degree, there's people being D&D build as well, which in of itself has a very sort of individualistic, sort of mercantile. Sort of core to its rule set, which reflects the it was created in America in the heart of capitalism, as it were. So yeah, I think that the enemies came out of that, and the corpos at least as the sort of antagonist came out of that. But that was quite tricky to. I mean, it was tricky also just from a perspective of like the corpos had to be. In a way, simultaneously, this quite all-powerful entity, but also like not so powerful that they just like completely destroyed you as soon as you appeared. So there was a little bit of
there's a bit of balance there,
bit of balance there, and a bit of intrigue and stuff. I think again, False Flag as a module, I think, which is one we wrote, sort of shows that I think the best. There's a lot of so it's like a Cold War, so that like you're not necessarily. Just immediately shooting nukes at each other, and everyone's not blowing each other up immediately because they don't want to escalate. So there's a bit more like intrigue, subterfuge, and you have to sort of pick which side you want to work with. There's a worker faction which you can like as players sort of help and support as well in that. But they're like really under-resourced and sandwiched between two very powerful corpos. Yeah. So there's difficult decisions in that module.
The other two big ones is obviously the Meld and the Bio Titans as well. And the Meld actually came from that initial playtest that I was saying that Mal Illage ran. So like he'd actually named them the Meld, and it was a nanite threat. And obviously that stems back to like a lot of other stuff from sci-fi broadly, like Grey Goo kind of thing. And then the Bio-Titans was just like, that was straight up like Neon Genesis, Pacific Rim, like, you know, Godzilla. It's just like, you're in a big mech, you want a giant monster to fight, like, you know, let's pop that in. But,
I do feel the Bio-Titans were just we wanted monsters to fight that look cool. That, you know, there's an element of like they're the sort of they're created by the cool pose as war machines, and they don't care. It's sort of the environmental damage that the cool pose have done, but really it's just we want giant monsters to fight. I do feel the meld are a bit more like linked a bit tighter to the themes, as they're like well, they're sort of like the Borg, they're like the extreme of like communal societies, like the hive mind kind of thing. They're the Starship Trooper kind of
hang on.
Heinlein thing.
Are they the bad communists?
They're the bad communists. They're tankies. Yeah, they're tankies.
They're literally the lefty.
Lefty themselves. Yeah. So I think they sort of do fit. They fit quite well thematically, I think, in a weird way. And beyond that, it was just it's wasteland shit. It's raiders and mutants and wasters.
Standard Fallout, Mad Max. You know.
Yeah. But we did try to make it a bit more. Like most wastelanders are really just trying to survive, and there are some raiders, but they're like more opportunists. Like we didn't want to go quite hard into like
BDSM sadist raiders that, you know, like skinning people and setting things on fire.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. So I think We Were Here First sort of has a little bit of that, because it's fun. But we did want to paint more of a. We attempted a bit of nuance, I guess.
A more sympathetic picture, I think, of people trying to survive, right?
Yeah. What's your route to survival, like, and people turn to raiding because it is a way to get scrap, you know, and maybe it's not good or whatnot, but yeah. But also in RPG terms, I know it's really tricky, like you giving players an enemy that they can feel like they're not going to have a 1 hour moral debate over fighting is. Yeah, for better or worse, can be quite important. And like initially, we skirted around that, but we at one point just said, "Fuck it, let's just have some raiders," and it did. It smoothed things over a bit.
It makes it easier in play, doesn't it? And that's also important because, you know, it's everything we do is like, right, okay, no, let's play test it though, and if it doesn't work, then you have to take that darling round the back of the shed and put a bullet in its face. You know,
you do.
You have to all yellow it.
Yep. Wow. It's one of our company mottos.
We don't say shoot the darling, we say shoot the puppy, because it's it's a bit more real, because, like, you know, really you have these ideas and you're like, no, I really want that. I think the first draft of the game that I wrote had and it was very important to the game because it had originally been designed to be played online only. And it was that you always have to speak in radio parlance. There's a whole section of the book dedicated to the radio parlance of the universe, and like, you know, like 10-4 and all of that stuff. And you had to speak like that at all times. It was like, you know, it was practically a LARP. And
Matt, could you
obviously we
imagine
cut that
Cartman
because.
that?
Sorry,
Cartman, one of our players in radio speak. Oh my god, the pain.
That would be painful.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're gonna have to try that.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. Like the first time we played it, I think the first time we played tested it, it had that rule, and we were doing it, and it was a lot of fun. But it doesn't work for like a game on general release, right? Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, people just ignore it.
People just ignore it, and you're like, okay, well, why did we even put that in?
Why put it there?
Yeah.
I can send you the Google Doc with the radio parlance stuff if you do want to run it. Maybe we'll do it as a zine or something. Yeah.
Oh hell yeah, that'd be awesome.
So aside from the pilot talk, were there any other things that you, like, unique things you were going to fit in it that you just decided, it just won't work?
So one of the really early ones actually was we had advantage in the game originally. So we had like an advantage-disadvantage system. That got cut almost immediately again because it's too easy to sort of like cheat with your design. It's like basically every system and module we came up with was like, oh, okay, it gives you advantage to this or disadvantage to that. And so like that was deliberately kind of hobbling ourselves in a way because like it makes you be more creative. Because that was like,
Yeah.
That was like an early one, wasn't it? That got cut.
It was, yeah, and we cut back because it, when we were designing stuff, it was like, oh, it's a targeter, I guess it gives you advantage. Oh, it's an ability that makes you better at combat, I guess it gives you advantage. Oh, it's a salvaging tool, I guess it gives you advantage at salvaging.
It's just boring.
Like, and it forced us to make, to make things different and to make abilities do, because the idea of the abilities in particular was like each one should just do like a really cool thing, a really cool and powerful thing, and it should feel like cheating a bit almost, like it should, the player, we kind of wanted players to be like, wait, you can just do that, and like, do I get a saving throw? It's like, no, just your arm's blown up, like, deal with it. We wanted to just, it was like, it's cool, you do the thing and it's powerful, but it costs, you've got quite limited resources.
Another one. No, the other one that we cut, which was an early one, was variable damage. So there's an idea that I came up with while working at Modiphius, actually, or like it's kind of a blog post that has been bouncing around my head but never really sort of like materialized. Is this concept of like emulative mechanics? So it's like most mechanics in games. So so big games design theory wise, like MDA, Mechanics, Dynamics, Aesthetics by Robin Hunicke is like a great piece on like games design, and it's about taking the gameplay experience or the aesthetics and then working backwards. So working through dynamics, which is how players interact with the rules, to the mechanics themselves. So you start with the experience and you work backwards, rather than saying, oh, okay, cool, so I'm going to make a fantasy game. Let's start with attributes and then a skill set and then blah, blah, blah. And then eventually you arrive at the experience that players are going to have out of it, right? You work backwards. Now, the point of emulative mechanics was this idea that, like, rather than trying to simulate a thing, well, this is going back to like GNS theory now, like Forge stuff, but rather than trying to simulate something, you try to emulate it. You give people, again, the feeling of it. Now, originally with the damage, we had this idea that, like, so all damage is rolled on dice, but then you roll dice equivalent to kind of what it is. So like a needle missile pod, for example, would roll like, 20d4. And that's the amount of damage you get out of it. But like a big plasma cannon just rolls a D100, and it's like so you get a big number but single shot, right? And we axed that one again pretty quick because it was like, right, okay, who actually has 40d4?
Yep.
So how is that actually happening?
And it didn't work with Quest.
And it didn't work with Quest
damage
as well. Quest uses flat damage
and like damage rolling. And again with the simplicity,
that one hurt to shoot though, because
it did.
I really like that idea of just like picking up a load of dice and rolling them. But
no, it is cool. But I think with the simplicity as well, again, it's that like an even damage, like rolling damage is another sort of step in that equation. But I'd argue one of the biggest things we left on the cutting room floor, at least we changed and developed, was the salvaging of itself.
Of course.
Because like initially, and you can if you track down the initial quick start which technically isn't online, but you can probably find it. The 1.0 quick start, it had the salvaging system worked effectively by finding different parts. So you'd have if you found a wiring loom and an optical glass and a piece of scrap metal, you could build a laser. If you found two pieces of scrap metal and a gun cartridge or whatever, you could build a machine gun.
It was kind of like a Minecraft-esque thing where you take an array of parts and you slap them together and it makes something that makes sense out of those parts.
Yeah, and it completely does not work in a tabletop role-playing game.
We realised that the character sheet would need to have this like enormous like Excel spreadsheet, effectively, of like all the hundreds of different components and how many of each of them you have. Like, so your inventory log has to be this enormous like sheet, right? And it just led to like player paralysis. Like, what do I do with this wiring loom? Do I sell it? Do I keep it? I might need it later. Am I going to get another one? Like,
Yeah, no, it just didn't work. Like, you had to. That sort of thing. I mean, we generally did playtest it as well, and we found that players, unless you had, like, system mastery, you didn't know what the value of the thing you just found was. Like, because you didn't know that a wiring loom could now be used to build a green laser, but if you saved it later on, you could build a railgun with it. And those are the decisions we wanted players to make, but we realised they would have had to, like, have internalised the entire rulebook before they could even make that decision, which is the complete opposite to the sort of simple game where we wanted players to immediately and sort of quite viscerally and simply understand.
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna. I want to shoot the thing. Do I shoot the thing? Yeah. Okay, you shoot the thing. Okay, cool. Do I get anything? Yeah, you get this.
Yeah.
And that sort of speed of play, right?
Yeah. So we changed it to a far more generic system, but a system I think works significantly better in a tabletop role-playing game where effectively scrap is just basically you just find scrap, and you can then use that scrap to build, like, if you have 3 scrap, you can build a green laser. If you have 4 scrap, you can build a blue laser. But then there's tech levels, and it's like, so you need 3 tech 2 to build a green laser, but 4 tech 3 to build a blue laser.
Yeah. I mean,
but it's all just scrap.
Even then, we modified that system like twice, right? Like
multiple,
multiple times. Like we had to modify that system because we play tested it, and it still didn't quite work because we had like an inefficiency built in initially, where like if you scrap something, you only get half back, and then it was like half this, double that, to like half to scrap, double to build, like and all of these kind of things. Eventually, we just went 1-to-1 on it, and it's just like, you can scrap everything. It actually works out really well because it means that, so if you get back to your crawler at the end of a session, you can just scrap your entire mech and build a whole new one at no disadvantage. And that was actually really key because one of the things we found in playtesting as well is that people hate changing their mech. They build one mech and they're like, no, I love this mech. There are many mechs like it, but this one is mine. Like, it's that, right? And so they would just refuse to do it, and they would just stay with Tech 1 mech like the whole time because they're like, oh no, I just want this. So like the most recent playtest you're running now, right, the open world one, that we have a system where it's like, oh yeah, so it's like sort of West Marches kind of style thing, but whenever you get back to the crawler, your mech is immediately liquidated, and then the scrap that comes from everyone's mechs being liquidated is available to the next group to build their mechs with. And it works really well because now, like,
it does, yeah. And the next group are like different because it's like open campaigns of the next group are a potentially a completely new group of players. And I mean, and to plug it, it'll probably still be running whilst you hear it. So if you want to join the Salvage Union open campaign, 7 p.m. GMT on Mondays, join the Salvage Union Discord to find out more. So that was sort of the idea with that, is that it forces play to rebuild their mechs, and I think that's another thing we found. But that's because that was another iteration, really, because initially we didn't have that system of the way you progress in the game is you get entirely new mechs, and you sort of you slowly go up the tech tree, but you pick like quite unique different chassis every time. Initially, it was a lot more of a simple system where you just sort of you pick your it was like light, medium, or heavy frame, and then that upgrades as you play, but because we missed 30 mechs in the core book, and because we wanted them to actually feel like genuine choices rather than just sort of different skins, we completely converted the system. We did a lot of playtesting on something.
We did a lot of playtesting.
Like an obscene amount, really, considering.
This is why it was kind of so late coming out in a way, right? Like,
why it
we were like, no, it can be better. It can be better than this. Let's do some more playtesting.
We genuinely did the meme of the Kickstarter. It's like, no, genuinely, but we did actually playtest it, and we were actually improving it. It wasn't just, we weren't just saying it because we were delayed. It was, but yeah. So that's a few
said
of us.
About having 30 odd mechs in the rulebook. Already, the Spera Electronics, the Kickstarter, adding more to it already. How do you guys feel about that kind of thing? That people are already inspired to build more from this world.
Oh man, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's
like
awesome.
I think that's just like the dream for any like games designer, really, is that people find your work so inspiring they want to build on it, right? I mean, we actually deliberately added some stuff to each of the modules as well, to sort of like expand it out, to separate out some of the more complicated rules, like the nanite rules are in False Flag, the biotech rules are in We Were Here First, the sort of diesel punk stuff is in Rainmaker. So we'd kind of already done a bit of that. But yeah, no, other people wanting to like add stuff to the game, that's awesome, man. Like, it's really cool. It's what the game's kind of built around in a way as well. Like, even I think when we were in layout, we were still adding systems because we found we had like some gaps in the layout, and we were like, oh right, okay. And people were suggesting stuff on the Discord. Like, I think I remember somebody said, oh, there should be like a sand blaster system, and you could use that as like kind of the mech equivalent of like pocket sand, right? So you've kind of like you've got that, but also like it can be used for like varying purposes. And we're like, that's a really cool idea. Let's chuck it in the book. We've got some time. Let's pop it in the book. And
there's a huge number of it. Like, there's loads of stuff we still left on the cutting room floor. But we'd also hope, third parties. would either publish like Spyro Electronics in a more sort of proper published form, or even just do homebrew stuff at home and stuff, because the game is designed for that. I think a real core tenet was that, like, whilst it is intended to be quite a simple and intuitive game at core, it still has a lot of customization
the depth,
options.
Right? It's complexity versus depth.
It is, and I think that was really important. And I feel like every one of them is like a genuine decision still. Like, even though the mechanics are quite light and quite loose in places, it still feels like, do I want to put a vertical thrust unit on my mech, or do I want to give it a hover loco instead, or do I want to give it this target?
Everything comes with a compromise, right?
Yeah, everything's a compromise, and you have to then work together as well, because we purposely made it so each mech is just a little uncomfortably squeezed, so you can't put everything you want on it. Like, you can't have a mech that's like got all the defensive options, all the offensive options, plus salvaging options, plus hacking options, plus communication options. Yeah,
you just can't.
You can't. Yeah.
One or the other, really.
Yeah, I mean, we actually worked it out. So even just the core book by itself, I think it's like 150 different 150 million different things potentially. Because it's actually crazy once you take all the different variables and multiply them. It's about 150 million different potentialities, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you do that math, it does become
it becomes ridiculous.
It's obscene, because you're timesing like every potential.
Yeah, every single option.
Yeah. It's at least that. Yeah.
But so from what I get from that, Jay, we have permission to make the Raiders BDSM group.
No, there's nothing in our SRD, which is we have a fully open SRD. There's nothing against BDSM in there. We're very kink positive as a company.
Yeah.
Why make it Raiders when you can go players?
Exactly.
Why not?
There's literally a
make
system
the
in the
players
core
the
book
horrible
called
Mad Max BDSM group.
We joke, but we probably will end up doing something like that.
Do you think either of us has the time? Actually, yeah. After the current project, maybe.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
There's literally a module in the core book called the personal recreation device.
Yeah, like a television. Or
television
massage.
Game console.
Tachi muscle.
Stress massager, perhaps. Yeah.
Have you seen the VR ones, Matt? But they exist now, and I.
Are we talking about the same thing?
Yep. VR thing that goes.
Oh wow!
Wow.
Sorry, just because I know I'm allowed to say it. One of my favourite words, I think, of the last 20 years, although I think it was like word of the year in the 90s at some point, but it's teledildonics, and I think that's just the best word. Yeah, and I really think it's not even hit its sort of like peak yet. But I think teledildonics is going to be very important in the future.
2025, a year of teledildonics.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, we'll get that.
Can you tell us what that means?
Teledildonics is basically the concept of internet-connected sex toys, where one activates the other. So like telecommunication, but in terms of stimulating another person sexually.
So it's like that scene in that film with Demolition Man.
Yeah, Demolition Man. Actually, more recently, perhaps Upload, where she's in the suit, and it's the whole thing. But teledildonics is a word. I think it's one of my favourite words ever, because it's like it feels like a made-up word, but it's actually a real word. It's in the dictionary. Check it out. I love it. Yeah, there you go.
So back on the game.
Sorry, back to the subject at hand.
Hey, we started the tangent, it's fine.
It's fair.
You guys have playtested an absolute ton for this game, and the progress shows. What do you look for when you are playtesting?
So I did a lot of playtests on our Discord, mostly with people from the Kickstarter initially. I mean, initially we did some friends like before we launched the Kickstarter, and then we had some fans and we invited them in to like playtest the game. And you're sort of looking for, again, it's like vibe, like Ala was talking about, sort of MDA, like mechanics and aesthetics and all that good jazz. Like how does this feel? And does this feel?
Does it give the right experience?
Yeah. Does this give the right experience as to what we intend? And if it doesn't, it gets cut. And that's often not necessarily based on feedback. Like feedback you always have to take a pinch of salt. Like there's a maxim that like players are often right about feedback for the wrong reasons, like or they can't quite identify it.
Yeah, but if they raise it, it's because there's a problem.
Yeah.
But their solution to that problem that they will inevitably recommend might not always be the right solution to it. Because a lot of times players will raise an objection because something isn't working as they expected it to, and then they will suggest add more rules to fix that. And sometimes actually the solution is to remove rules.
Yeah.
But so you always have to take it with a pinch of salt. But I think, the most important thing about feedback is trying to hear what people are saying is their objection. It's understanding the objection as opposed to understanding the suggestion, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think also just like observing what choices players like. So the Mecha Pulse was a good example for that. I think.
Oh god, that was a huge one actually.
Yeah. So the Mecha Pulse is a Tech 1 system in the game that the initial concept of it is that it's basically a giant catapult that throws scrap at an enemy or a location or whatever you want to do with it. It's a big catapult. It fires scrap, and initially it was quite dull. It was
did good damage. We put the damage numbers really high on it.
Yeah,
because that's the thing. The scrap, obviously, you lose the scrap, and scrap is like a valuable resource in the game. Right?
Yeah. So when it launches, it destroys the scrap. But initially it did like loads of damage. It did like 3 times the tech level of a scrap or something. So it was like solid damage numbers because we had worked out like what average damage should be at each tech level, and it like beat that by a good margin. But nobody ever picked it. Nobody ever picked it.
Nobody ever picked it because they were like, no, scrap's too valuable a resource, and we don't want to waste it.
And we kept increasing the damage number until it got to, I think it got to like at least 4 times.
We got it to 6 times, I think.
Oh yeah, I think.
People still didn't pick it.
Yeah, people didn't pick it. And so then we just changed it entirely, and we did a D20 table for it. So with 20 different options. So when you now use it, you spend scrap, you roll the dice, you roll a D20. And there's 20 different options that range from it exploding and killing all your allies to it shooting like irradiated scrap to it, like sparking electricity to it shooting fire. Like there's just loads of different options, and suddenly everyone picked it because it was just dumb and fun. And
it was fun. But then the funny thing is on the new table, the damage was dialed like way down.
Yeah,
it's like
and there's far more negative effects.
Frankly, now it's a fucking liability if you take it, but people take it all the time because it's the experience of having it. It's not always just about the numbers, right? It's about the experience that you're providing, and that was.
It's the wild magic sorcerer.
Yes, it is absolutely.
Exactly.
You could fireball your party.
Yeah.
It's the snotling warp gun, right?
Yeah,
from 40k. It's that, right? Like it's a stupid thing, but people love it because it's unpredictable and it's crazy. And really, actually, the key thing with it is that it drives good narrative, because when you use it, something interesting happens. You don't just like, you use it, okay, well, I get this number result. It's like something interesting is happening, and that's really what's at the core of most like RPGs. Really, people are waiting for something interesting to happen, and the more you can facilitate that, the better, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. You want interesting things to happen a lot, and every ability, and also every like system and module, etc.
Is designed to facilitate
something
that.
has to be interesting.
Yeah.
So I think that through playtesting and it's just a process. We did a lot of feedback forms. We listened a lot. We tweaked a lot. Like as we said, we edited the salvaging system, went for a lot of iterations. I think it was just too harsh initially, and we upped the numbers because it felt like too grueling for players. Like players were coming back with just like no scrap or negative scrap like so frequently,
just to try and stay alive.
And arguably worse, just getting quite confused, like because of all the different like multiplications and halvings, where they weren't able to still make the intuitive sort of decisions. So we just made it as simple as possible, and that seemed to iron it out. Right?
It did.
Yeah.
I will admit, when you said Mechapult, my first thought was the ability to like pick up another mech and just fastball special.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people have that's the other. Like, people have used it for that as well in play, and it's a very permissive system. So I just sort of say, roll on the table, and that will happen to that mech.
In theory, that's actually kind of core to the design philosophy of the game as well. It's like all the systems and modules have like a written use, but they also have like a little narrative blurb just before the like written explicit use. So you can use it for its explicit use because, like, you know, obviously trad gaming sort of model like D&D, you have like these buttons on your character sheet that you can press if you're not like super comfortable with improving everything. But then also there is this thing of like, you know, like the hose, right? So we have like just a water hose system basically, and it's just you just have like a hose. And there's a written specific thing of if you hose down a mech, then it removes heat in an action. But it's also a hose. Like, you know, if you want to make something wet, you can. Like, you know, so it's like, how are you using that? It's like that sort of old school D&D thing of like, I think the first time I played D&D, I had like summon water as a spell. And the first thing I did was like, oh, right, okay, we're in a fight. I'd like have 0 good spells because it's like, you know, level 1. So I was like, oh, can I just conjure water around this guy's head and drown him? And it's like, it's that instant thing that everybody always does is like, how can I leverage this to an advantage, right? And so providing that, I think, is, you know, providing a gateway to that is like, you know, is good. Yeah, it's good design in that regard.
There's no rule that says water's wet, so...
Right. Oh god, are we going to get into this one? No.
What?
I mean,
so there's a physics argument, right, that water isn't necessarily like what is wet. What is the concept of wetness? And so you say that something is wet, but what that means is that you have like basically something on the surface that elicits less friction. But like, is sand wet? Because sand often behaves in a similar way as water does, but we don't consider it to be wet, right?
Yeah. You got a bit deeper with me. I mean, I was more trying to make a point of...
oh, sorry, right, okay.
Yeah,
that conversation.
No, we weren't really. No, I was more trying to make a point of, like, we were talking earlier about, like, how many... Like, what mechanics do you need to define?
Oh yeah, no keywords.
Yeah. What do you need to define?
Oh,
it's like, do you need to, you know, do you need to define that water is wet? And there are some players out there who genuinely would be like, well, it doesn't say that the hose can put out a fire, you know.
It doesn't have like, you know, the anti-burn keyword.
Yeah,
or whatever.
So I guess it can't. So there is that. But yes, the idea with the game is that you make shit up. Yeah. It's a hose.
Sorry, I went way too deep on that for a second. Yeah, sorry guys. Yeah.
Or it's a sand.
That's fine. It's always quite interesting to have the random deep moments.
Yeah.
Throughout this entire project, what would you say has been your most memorable thing about it? I mean, obviously it's funded, it's been out for a while now, but what was the most memorable thing about the whole thing?
So for me, I would say the dev process. So it's when we were first mapping out basically the framework of the game. So we did it in the flat that we're in now, and we had like I really like wallpaper lining paper. If you know what that is. Basically, you can go to B&Q and you can get this big roll of like, it's essentially craft paper, but it's what you put on the wall before you put fancy wallpaper up, right? And it helps to smooth out the wall. But you can get like a whole roll of that stuff for like a couple of quid, and it's massive. And so we had like a load of highlighters and this wallpaper lining paper, and we just like rolled it across. I have this really narrow but long table because of the shape of my flat. Anyway, so we rolled this paper all out, and then we were just like writing everything on. And we did like so many sheets, like it was about 10 sheets of it. And eventually we'd kind of frameworked out like the whole game for the most part, like all the abilities, just names, not like what they do, but like just the vibe of what the thing should be. And then we laid it all out on the bed afterwards and took a photo of it. And it was just like this big photo of like all of these just like keyword soup basically on all of this paper. And that was just like, okay, cool, that's the game. Let's make it. Yeah. You know, and it was that moment of like, oh hey, we have something here. That was for me, a really, really nice moment, I think.
Yeah, no, that was a really nice moment.
And, have you still got it?
I still have the photo. I'm not sure we do. I think we have it in the studio somewhere. Yeah. It's on like a top shelf somewhere. I don't know. It's I don't know. The photo's on Twitter somewhere, probably. But.
Probably. Yeah. No, that was a really good moment, and that's when we sort of essentialised a lot of the design. For me, there was that. There was, I mean, to be honest, when I look back, it's really like, because I did the majority of the writing on the project. In the end, I mean, Salvage Union is like a 90,000 word book or so, and I don't remember writing it. Like it all just sort of merged together into a fugue state. It was bizarre. It's like the biggest thing I've ever worked on. but it didn't. Yeah, it wasn't quite. That just there's a lot of dead time in there, just because we were so busy and frantic and just got to get the thing done. But certainly, I think the play testing for me and the play test groups, plus like the games I ran at UK Games Expo, for example, Games on Demand were very memorable and was also a good like sort of feeling.
Sorry. Can I say a second one actually, because I just remembered another one, which was at Dragon Meet when we just launched the campaign. So we'd done the quick start. So this is before we'd even done that sort of like frameworking stuff, right? So it was even before then. We'd done the quick start, and we were at Dragon Meet 2022, and
well, I wasn't.
You weren't,
the one
because
I'm
you had
thinking
COVID.
I had COVID.
Yeah. Lloyd Gian ran a playtest for us. And I remember thinking, I think we have something here, because Lloyd ran a playtest, and we were currently running the Kickstarter campaign, so it wasn't even for sale. But we were running the Kickstarter campaign, and we had some printed quick starts. And so if you backed it, you got a free one. And anyway, so like he ran this session for 4 people, and all 4 of them who had played the thing came over and immediately backed the Kickstarter. And not only that, but one guy who was on a table next to Lloyd while he was running this playtest was like, "You guys sound like you're having so much fun." And he was playing another game, but he was just listening in on the game that Lloyd's running. He came over and backed it because he was like, "Well, I don't know, they just sounded like they were having so much fun. This sounds amazing. I've got to have it." And it was like, that was just like a bit of a moment of like, holy shit, do we have something like big here? Because this is nice.
Yeah.
That was nice. Yeah.
I mean, also Lloyd's an insanely good GM.
Lloyd's an insanely good GM,
okay.
and he makes everything that he runs
He
amazing.
does.
So
He does.
But credit where it's due. Yeah.
I think there was something to the game as well. Yeah.
But it was a nice moment, you know. It's like some guy who's not even ever played it, he just heard other people playing it, like wanted to buy it, right? Like that was nice.
No, that was cool. Yeah.
So you've talked about the best, let's see the worst. What parts of making and testing out the game were just the worst, the most difficult and this?
That lift broke.
When the lift broke, I was about to say the exact same thing. That's fulfillment. So we were we'd finished it. All the books are in. We're doing the packing. We're sending it out to all the backers. We've packed up 750 kilos worth of books. Jesus. So Royal Mail. So you can get like Royal Mail to come and pick up your packages, right? And they will, like, if there's a lot, they'll drop off these cages. They're called yokes. They will drop them off, and they're basically like, you know, if you've been down Asda, Tesco, whatever, like, you know, the cages that they have for the food, they're that big, they're that size. We had 2 of those completely full, right, of packages to go out, and we've got our studios in like an industrial building, so like they have this like industrial lift in there, and and that's always been working the whole time. We'd been there like a year, and it's never broken. And so we've got 750 kilos worth of packages on 2 cages, full, and the Royal Mail lorry comes to collect the cages, and the guy comes and we're like, okay, cool. We try and call the lift and it doesn't work, and then the guy's like, so then the guys in the unit next door to us, like, they've had problems with the lift because they're like woodworking guys, so they use it more than we do, and they were like, oh, okay, let's try and reset it, and the guy's like, one of the guys there was like, oh yeah, no, I've seen the lift engineer do it, and he's trying to fix it, and it's just not happening. And then the Royal Mail guy goes, right, okay, well, look, I've got to go do another collection. I will come back in 20 minutes. As many parcels as you can get downstairs, I will take them, but like, I only have 1 spare cage on my lorry, so you can get cage worth, but the rest of it's going to be late. And we were panicking because we're already late for filling. And we were going to Dragon Meet like the next week, so we were like, right, okay, well, we're gonna launch it at retail. Like, the backers have to have it.
It's like in 3 days.
Yeah, it's like, no, it's 3 days. Yeah, no, you're right.
Saturday.
And we were like, no,
Thursday.
There you go. And we were like, no, the backers have to have it before we go to retail. Like, we have to at least have shipped it, right? So we had 20 minutes, and it was like a reality fitness TV show thing. We were like, right, okay, we've got to get all this stuff like downstairs. There's 3 flights of stairs, right, downstairs to get. So we were just like bagging them up, and we were just carrying these sacks of parcels like downstairs, running up and down the stairs. We carried one of the cages down the stairs. And we did it all in like 25 minutes. We shipped all the parcels downstairs, and we got it all in the cage, and we did it. But yeah, fuck me, that was
I mean, crawled in a corner and had a little cry.
No, genuinely. I ruined
Sounds
a really
rough,
good
man.
jumper as well doing that one. Like, it's all bobbled up now because of like the parcels rubbing up against it.
So that was a very stressful moment.
That was stressful.
I think more abstractly for me, I don't know. It was so the Kickstarter did a lot better than I had certainly expected. I knew it was a good
more
idea.
bullish than you were.
You were, yeah. I knew it was a good idea. I knew there was stuff behind it, but we were a very early company.
Still double what I thought.
Yeah, but it was double what you thought, and it was about 4 times what I thought. You know, and I'd have been happy with, about like a quarter of what we did. So then when it did do very well, and we were suddenly getting a lot of game press and all sorts, and Dicebreaker articles, and a lot of backers, like 2,400 backers, there was suddenly just a lot of pressure, right? It went from like, this is a cool fun thing, and we'll throw it out there, to like, oh shit, we need to like make this, and I need to write a lot of it. So that was a lot of pressure, and then there was a lot of a lot of you learn a lot, like a lot of logistics and a lot of just dealing with business stuff, but also trying to be creative and do a lot of writing and playtesting and stuff, and just trying to make it as good as possible, but also hitting the deadlines, which we were a bit late on, and we obviously did want to make the game as good as possible, and there was a lot of pressure there, and that was difficult, to a degree for me to deal with, because it's a lot, it's a lot.
Yeah, you have to learn a whole other skill set, in terms of like logistics and production and all of these things, and the things you don't necessarily know, but you reckon you can figure out. But then it's complicated, man. It's like sending pallets to America for shipping in America, and making sure that everything arrives on time and then goes out on time, and even from a layout perspective, obviously my background's graphic design, so I know layout, but layout for print is a whole other animal, and figuring that out. There's a lot of that, isn't there?
Just the core bulk of the work, and we had a lot of fans and people who liked the initial concept, and it was like, can we deliver this to the standard that we've promised? And I think that's the thing with all Kickstarters, but for ours it we did genuinely expand the game so much and like playtest it so much more, because we'd had so much support from the community.
You don't let anyone down, do you?
No, you don't. Yeah, and you've already said, like, and we get a lot of positive comments, but when someone isn't happy with something, it does affect you, and often it's like, it's fair, maybe there's a typo, or maybe it just doesn't.
Often.
Or maybe it's not quite what they expected. Maybe they did want more of a crunchy salvaging system like it was originally, or whatever. And you do think like, oh, you still feel a bit bad, even though you think, well, we still made that decision for like the best of the game, but what we thought was the best game in the end. Nonetheless, it is a decision that we made, and it could have been different. And you second guess yourself a bit as well, I think.
No, you definitely do.
That can be quite hard. You have to, because because we could have done. There's all sorts of decisions we could have made.
Oh, we could have made a completely different game.
Completely different game. Yeah, and you do wonder sometimes, but we did our best, and I'm still proud of it. But,
We still talk about that one sometimes. Like, oh, but what if we'd have done this? What would you change? Actually, that's a question we pander back and forth between
all
each other.
the time.
What would you change about the game if you had the opportunity to do it now? And that's a hard one, because there's always an answer. But we always tend to come back to the same decisions, right?
Yeah, I think you do for the most part. Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be little niggles and stuff, but yeah, for the most part, because you just talk through the same conversation you already had again.
Exactly.
No, I was right. It did make sense. Anyway,
That leads on to basically one of the last things we have is, what are your future plans now? I mean, what's next? What comes out after this, obviously?
So we've got a few projects in the works, as it were. For Salvage Union, the next thing we do want to work on and release is the Salvage Union starter set, which is a kind of box set with kind of an introductory classic starter set product. It will have like a new starter adventure, some nice maps of the world, and the rule book's kind of condensed and split up to make them a bit more like all the systems and modules split up to make them a bit more manageable, and some pre-made characters and some dice and other stuff. So that's like our next idea for Salvage that we've been working on.
Martin, that one.
And
then the one we're actively currently working on is it's not a Salvage thing, but it's working title Cyblock. So it's for the Cyborg RPG by Johan Noor and it's not Nils Pearson because that was Morkborg. Who worked with Johan on Cyborg? I can't remember now. That's embarrassing for me.
Christian.
Christian Sorensen.
Yeah.
We're working on a cyborg mega dungeon basically. So it's kind of like the movie Dread with Carl Urban playing Judge Dredd. So it's basically a massive sort of like tower block mega dungeon effectively. So you kind of like, it's a campaign in a book, but it's going to be a really big book because this thing is like 50 stories tall and like hundreds of rooms per floor. It's like, I think our current map for it has about like 6,000 rooms, so it's like it's huge, it's vast, but yeah, it's about like condensing that into kind of a usable format. And how do we do that? So that's what we're working on at the moment, which is like really exciting because I'm currently working on the cover illustration, which is really cool. It's kind of based around so there's some real world influences as well, like the Tower of David from Caracas. So like an abandoned building that's taken over by people who then form a community within that building and sort of fit it out themselves, mixed with that sort of dystopian cyberpunk megablock thing. Like the Vodafone Tower as well, it's got this hollow core which is like filled with trash, and the classic sort of Kowloon Walled City kind of vibe thing, right?
I'm really excited to work on that too. It was actually initially a zine project that got a bit out of control. I think we were talking about different zine quest projects, and we came upon that, and it seemed like a really cool idea. But then we were like, well, it's a mega block. It can't really be a zine, can it? It needs to be.
It needs
and
to be
we were like, oh, well, okay, we'll make it a hard, but maybe an A4, like similar to Cyber. We were like, oh, it probably needs to be A4, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like, well, how many pages does it take? Does it do 50 floors? And then you're like, okay, well, is it 600 pages long? And so we're currently trying to manage the scale of it a little bit, and print costs and stuff. But it's gonna be big. It's gonna be like huge.
And I feel this year's the year of Mega Dungeon. Dungeon 23 was last year, and it was certainly. So I did a bit of Dungeon 23, and that sort of formed part of the
initial
part of that initial prep, and our discussions around it were definitely inspired by Dungeon 23 and us. Sort of getting excited about Mega Dungeons, and then it's coming together.
We played a bit of Stonehell recently, haven't we?
We're playing Stonehell, which is an old school essentials. Actually, it was initially designed for Labyrinth Lord, but I ran it in old school essentials. Labyrinth Lord's kind of similar to, it's like basic and expert, but with a bit more. It was actually sort of basic and expert, but they were a bit more worried about whether they'd get sued, so they just kept it like a bit more different. And then OSC came along and was like, "Nah, we'll just make it basically the same." We've been playing Stonehell. We ran a playtest of it actually at Contingency we were at recently. A playtest of Cyblock, which went really well as well.
I actually played in it, and who was it? Was it Johnny McKenna that had the laser? Johnny destroyed 21 floors with one shot, which was kind of quite fun. It ran quite well, didn't it?
It did work. So basically done now, isn't it, then, Matt?
Finished, mate. It's done. Yeah,
one run session. It was easy,
easy. We don't have 50 floors to it.
It was good, though. It felt good. It reminded me in a weird way of our first playtest I did of Salvage Union, where I was like, okay, there is a game here. I tend to really need to. I'd have to run something before I feel any confidence about it. Like until I've run something, I'm always like, is this good? I don't know. This is probably bad.
We're so different in that. Because all I have to do is be able to visualize the cover and what it aesthetically looks like, and I'm like, cool, I can see that, that's a product. And you're like, but does it actually play well? It's why we need to team up, because otherwise I would produce very nice looking things that are just like crap to play.
Amazing covers.
Amazing covers, but
Any plans on going to Comic-Con at all, or anything like that this year?
We want to
Comic-Con.
do all the cons. So Comic-Con, we're planning on
We've
going.
got something to sell now. That's
we
the
have
lovely thing.
something
We've been
big.
going to cons for so many years, and it's like we've just got like little zine things, and we don't have a big book, right?
Well, we sell a promise, don't we? We've been doing pre-orders. So it's going to be great, guys.
Yeah.
We've done like 3 different quick starts. Sorry, what was that?
Are you going to go to the October Comic-Con in London?
I think for but,
Yeah, well, we're London based, so that makes sense for us. So probably Comic-Con, definitely UKG.
Tabletop Scotland's on the list.
Scotland's on the list.
Gaelcon
as well.
Hold on, did you say Scotland? Which one?
Tabletop Scotland is in. Is it in Perth? I think.
No, I think it's in Edinburgh.
Was it in Edinburgh this year? It was in Perth last year, wasn't it?
And Jay will see you there by the sounds of it.
Because they changed venue.
Potentially, we'll see.
Yeah, they changed venue.
If it's in Glasgow, I'm not fucking going.
Oh, is it in Glasgow?
Yeah, it's Edinburgh.
Okay. We're planning all of that. We're in the planning stages. But we want to do. We're trying to hit everything really, we won't be at Gen Con, I don't think.
Probably not, but we may. Who knows?
Local, but
there may be people stocking Salvage Union at Gen Con. We don't know.
But, no confirmation on that yet.
But hopefully,
we're trying to arrange that.
And we might be there just as punters, as lads, just turning up.
Lads on tour?
Lads. But I don't know if we'll be. We won't be. Probably won't be.
We won't have a stand.
Exhibiting,
which would be nice actually, because contingency was fun for that. Like when
having fun at a convention.
I know, right? Like when you're selling stuff, you rarely get to actually like just play games and go around and have fun. So that was really nice. Actually.
The highlight for conventions for me these days are just sitting down, or putting on my con slippers.
Yeah, your con slippers. yeah.
Con slippers.
No, Paddy's very well known. He brings a pair of slippers to him to every convention, and he immediately changes out of his shoes into slippers. Because we don't have soft floor, so it's
It's not a bad idea.
No, it really works. Yeah, it helps a lot.
Yeah, no, it does.
Also, just feet end up killing.
Tell you what I've seen at a con before. Someone walking around in a cosplay of like a tall character with platform Uggs.
Platform Uggs. Oh my god, that's
platform Uggs.
That's such a contradiction in terms. It's like the most comfortable shoe mixed with the most uncomfortable shoe, surely.
Is that just to make it a regular shoe?
Regular comfort level, maybe. Definitely not regular looking.
Well,
I think.
I suppose the last thing then is where can people find you guys online? Your socials, websites, things like that.
Yeah, so you can find us. Our website's www.leyline.press. You can pick up Salvage Union from us directly there, as well as the free adventure modules with the system. We Were Here First, Rainmaker, and False Flag, and some dice and patches and other bits and pieces. We're also on Twitter. You can follow at Leyline Press, and you can also follow at Salvage Union, and those same tags are on Instagram, and we're like Blue Sky and various other things as well, but generally at Leyline Press or at Salvage Union will find us.
Pretty much all platforms, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you guys and having you on the show. Thank you again, Panny, for running us the game, which you did. That should be coming out the same time as this does.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to run.
That was hilarious. Did you hear the preview Styles gave you?
No, it was. It was. I listened to the preview. It was. It was all good. Audio was really clean as well. So yeah.
Nice. Right. Well, without further ado, anything else, Jay? You want to say?
Nope.
No. Well, right. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thanks very much for your time. Cheers, guys.